Welcome to JWC Livestream. This is Poetic Deep Dive, where we talk about poetry and how important poetry is for all creative writers, as a means of language play, which is, to me, exposure to language in a creative way, and what I call poetic voice fulfillment. That is your style on the page. There's a variety of ways to acquire voice fulfillment. Chiefly, it's through reading, a lot of reading of everything. But poetry, there's a certain mechanical thing. There's a certain vibrational thing that happens with poetry. It helps you dial in with dialogue. It helps you describe, especially the kind of poetry I used to be into. And the more poetry you read, the more interest there will be in the unconsciousness of your narrative. Yeah, when you write books, when you write a couple books, you'll see how it springs up, and there's things that appear that you're like, wow, I didn't even think about that. And it's like mythology and poetry help to make that stuff happen. It drives your narrative. It helps with your characters and your world building, more importantly. I feel like I have to make excuses for poetry. I feel like I have to justify it somehow. I mean, a couple hundred years ago, it was king. It was everything. And nowadays, people, it has been diminished by our culture. It has been marginalized by politics. And the thing we have to focus on for Poetic Deep Dive is explaining why it's useful, but also to defend its loss, to seize it back. Because when I first started this, I was a poet. That's what I was writing. I just kept writing and playing around with language, and then eventually things changed, and I grew cold to poetry. But lately, I've been writing poetry. A couple more weeks, we'll get to the newer stuff. Stuff I've been reading on this show lately was written a couple months ago, when the first urges of resurgence were, they were first manifesting. No doubt due to meeting the resident poet himself. It is still technically January, but last month we did the Victorian Posy. We're going to do like a monthly thing where we change the poets. February, for some reason, is now we're going to do Charles Bukowski. We got a bunch of plans for you as the year goes on. If this show should continue, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a different poet every month. There may be some months with a few. I don't know. We'll see. It all depends. Depends on a lot of things. But in this particular case, we're talking about Bukowski. Specifically, Love is a Dog from Hell. I got a couple of his poetry books, and I've read all his novels. There's a real treat waiting for anybody who wants spoken word. If you go on YouTube, and some of his readings are embedded in a couple documentaries on him. He was a real interesting fellow, let's say. Not everybody sees him with a level eye. Some people think he's this and think he's that, but if you knew where he came from, you can hear the language of trauma, or at least I can. You can hear it a mile away. If you're listening, if you're being mindful, if you're being honest, you can hear it a mile away. And that's the thing with Hank. He made no secret of it. He was a ravaged lion, and he explained why. Anybody who knows his story, like dig on Ham on Rye, read Women, you'll see. Because you may say, "Oh, Love is a Dog from Hell." Wow, that's a gruesome title. Why would anybody? I think it's a great title. I think it's exactly what a poetry book should be called, personally. But what do I know? I'm just a goose. Some people say I'm a poet. Some people say this and that. I'm holding on for dear life. We don't want to cling to titles. We want to write poetry. We don't want to say I am a poet or I'm this. We want to be writing poetry and reading poetry. It's much better to have it come out of somebody else's mouth. Wow, you're a good poet. Wow, you're this. They use high caliber words like talented and genius and all this. If you could write a vital poem and then you have the gumption to read it in front of people or at an open mic, there's a thing that de-emphasizes performance too. Yeah, it's definitely got to be beautiful on the page. One leads to the other, though. You want to have it where you can read it, and that when it's read, it sounds dramatic. It sounds poetic. It sounds the way it's supposed to be. And that'll help everything. Well, poems, blah, blah. No, they're important. Think about it. You write a beautiful poem on the page, you read a beautiful poem out loud. It's going to improve your paragraph. It's going to improve your sentence. Paragraphing and syntax. You come up, write some beautiful, legendary thing. Poetry is for the joy of itself, but if you're using it as a method to fulfill your voice and achieve your own style, it's all important. I've been working on some creepy ones, writing some creepy poetry. I've come full circle. I feel like I'm eating my own tail, as it were, like the Ouroboros. Because I started out with all this gruesome poetry, and now it's coming back. It's spooky and brutal, filled with a lot of dark energy, as it's been put. Wonder why that could be. Maybe there's that language of trauma again. Who knows? What I do know is I relate to Charles Bukowski. I relate to him a lot. I think he was a little brutal. And perhaps he was misunderstood, certainly, but perhaps he even misunderstood himself. I'm not sure. Being in the position he was in, I'm not going to judge him. I'm not a judgy kind of guy. Well, anyway, what we have here is Love is a Dog from Hell, Charles Bukowski. And what we are going to do is we have two of his poems that we're going to try to read today. I'm trying to pick the oddballs. I'm not trying to pick a typical Bukowski poem. I'm trying to pick the very strange and anomalous ones that sit out on the fringe. There are various reasons for that. This one is called Sitting in a Sandwich Joint. My daughter is most glorious. We're eating a takeout snack in my car in Santa Monica. I say, "Hey, kid, my life has been good, so good." She looks at me. I put my head down on the steering wheel, shudder. Then I kick the door open, put on a mock puke. I straighten up. She laughs, biting into her sandwich. I pick up 4 French fries, put them into my mouth, chew them. It's 5:30 p.m. and the cars run up and down past us. I sneak a look. We've got all the luck we need. Her eyes are brilliant with the remainder of the day, and she's grinning. That is Sitting in a Sandwich Joint by Charles Bukowski. Very nice poem, I'd say. This thing about his verse, it's very picturesque. One might say cinematic, but it could be photographic. Each of those little scenes, and specifically the high ones, the ones that are glimmering and most important. Him kicking the door, her grinning face. There's so much significance there in what he's conveying. He's having a beautiful moment with his daughter. That's why I picked that one. I'm sure he had many beautiful moments with his daughter, but most of his poems are, griping or confronting, or there's profanity. He's obviously coming out of some sort of frustration or anger or sadness. I mean, I saw him in a spoken word read a poem, and he started to cry while he was reading it. That's a poet. It used to happen to me. I'm not in the least bit ashamed to say it. You write words that move you, then they're vital, they're alive. No one could accuse this poem we just read of not being vital. Maybe you don't like free verse, maybe you don't like Bukowski, maybe, but you felt all that stuff. It was there. And if you don't, well, I did. It's a very, very important thing that the poem be vital. You go through this situation. My daughter is most glorious, he praises. And then he talks about how they're eating. It's American dream. He's got his kid. They're having French fries and whatever else, cheeseburger, hot dog, whatever's going on. He used to live on a candy bar a day. And he went to great pains to communicate that. It's all he could afford, apparently. Because he drank. He drank. And he wasn't, I don't know. I forget what word they used to describe him, but it's not that he was a menacing presence, but there was something about him that was overbearing, and not everybody could deal with it. We know about his situation with the acne vulgaris. Had some of that in my family too. So we know what's up with that, but the fact that he's able to sit in the car with his daughter and have all that stuff, it must have been a surprise to him. He probably was like, wow, I am doing good. Because he said, hey, kid, my life has been good, so good. Because now he gets to treat his daughter after being on the skids forever. And he's being a goose, putting on a mock puke. If anybody knew how to puke, it would be him, let me tell you. And it's just their togetherness. It's a very, very beautiful thing. You could see the sunlight. You could see the door, the top of the door of the car. You could see all that stuff. And it feels like you're there. That's the goal when you write a poem like that. It's a sketch of a memory. You can go to a park and sketch the duckies or a skyline. You can sketch anything. Your imagination is the filter it's got to pass through. So when he's sketching this memory, it became a poem. He sketched it, and you can see that it made him happy to do that. So that's a big deal, man. That's a poem right there. And we got another one of these, because it's two. They're pretty short anyway. This one especially. Again, this is Charles Bukowski reading out of Love is a Dog from Hell. He wrote that book, a book of poems. This is in the mid-70s, these poems were written. And this poem's called I'm Getting Back to Where I Was. It's a shorty. I used to take the back off the telephone and stuff it with rags. And when somebody knocked, I wouldn't answer. And if they persisted, I'd tell them in terms vulgar to vanish. Just another old crank with wings of gold, flabby white belly plus eyes to knock out the sun. So see, the honesty, he knew who he was. And he persistently, throughout his works, he explains how he doesn't like people. He likes solitude, which is a very profitable attitude to have when you're a writer, because writing is solitary. Yeah, you could write in public. Sure, I have. I know people who have. But most of the time, your craft is happening by yourself, with yourself, you and the muse. If you spiritualize it, fine. If you materialize it, just as fine. However you want to approach it, but it is normally solitary. And he didn't like people. So him telling them to vanish in terms vulgar, that's exactly like him. And he knows what he is. So this is a shorty, but it gives you a little window. So the last time we had a sketch of a memory. This is a window. This is a window into his heart space. So let's remember that, folks. Hank is teaching us wisdom. You could do sketches or you could do windows. A sketch is you're watching something happen, even if it's in your head, you're watching it happen and you're writing it down according to a muse flash, which is the source of the poetry, the unconscious networking, where inspiration comes from. They don't know where inspiration comes from, but you can kind of draw a roadmap through the wilderness of the mind. It's in unconsciousness. A dream can inspire you. A daydream can inspire you. You get that flickering, that wheedling that comes out of nowhere. And it's like, wow, that was a great idea. I had a few of those today. Unconsciousness is the writer's best friend. You mean knocked out? No, I mean, when you're daydreaming, you're half conscious, half unconscious. It's like fading in and out. The mingling of the two is where inspiration lives. So if you write sketches, you're going to write something you see, either a memory or a landscape. But if you write windows, poetic windows, that means it's a framing of something. In this instance, he just gave you a piece of his heart. Hank used to say when he read at open mics or at, not open mics with him, it's legit. They paid him to be there, man. When he read in public, he said, you know, I have your money and you have my soul. Well, that's a poetic window, folks, a window into the soul of the poet. Because he's giving you a heart space, a piece of attitude that he has about stuff. So that's Bukowski. Don't say I didn't warn you. Those were beautiful. Now, I'm going to read you one of mine. It's all right. I'm still warming up. I don't know that I can compare, and I'm not trying to compare. What we're doing here is exercises. I can't speak from a poetic authority if I'm not writing poetry. This was put to me. So, such as it is, here's Theatrical Culture by Richard Andrew Olkus, who is me. Evolution, the very final frontier of flesh and blood. A gradual warping of freedom and captivity until mind, body, and spirit narrow into a warren's hole. Some are fortified in splendor, while others pass from highway to byway in search of a timeless mastery of drama, becoming a personal stranger. The dramatist and actor is known by their unknowable qualities, by the way they transform and reform and deform themselves out of characteristic default, shape-shifting one's body, terraforming the scene, transcending static being into amorphous allness, as if a person became a poem. Allness as if a person became a poem. I'm just repeating that. Some humans are no one, and this was by design. Like blood unto a psychopath, identity fixation has captured what is, allowing us to see theatrical culture. So that's the concept of theatrical culture. The more corporate things are, the more you have to pretend, the more theatrical you must be. You can't say and do what you want to do on corporate time. You have to do what the email says. You have to conform. And that breeds a theatrical culture, and a theatrical culture breeds the evolution itself. So that one's not so bad. I'm not going to pat myself on the back. Don't think I could reach. But that being said, it's got some depth to it. I'm not so upset. There are worse. I don't know. We'll see what this one is. This one's called Playing House. Another one I wrote. Richard Andrew Olcus over here. That's me. I dreamt of us together as if we would never be parted, listening to the reasons pass by our lovely bay window. There came decades, births, deaths, and transcendent moral values. Every moment was a godsend, every dayscape a miraculous omen. Somnific gateways close as I long to continue playing house. So that first one, theatrical culture, is talking about theater. You're pretending to be a certain way. You're acting a way that is not how you would act. You're putting on corporate masks. This next one is it's a window. It's a heart space. I dreamt of us together as if we would never be parted. It must have been a daydream of some past thing, some past person, someone dear. And listening to the seasons pass by our lovely bay window. So the daydream flickered by as if years were going. Years were coming and going. Decades, births, deaths, and transcendent moral values. Every moment was a godsend. Every dayscape a miraculous omen. You see the significance that's being reached for. I don't know if I've made it, but it's being reached for. That much is, you can't question that. Somnific gateways close as I long to continue playing house. So somnific gateways is a poetic way of saying that it's a dream. The way it says at the top, I dreamt of us together. So this is an example of unconsciousness. I must have had a dream or a daydream or something. And out of that unconsciousness came a feeling. So you see, that's a window. And there's even, the lovely bay window is even a feature in the poem. Now that's unconsciousness. I didn't plan on that. I just said window today. But in this instance, we're seeing it framed. We're seeing the heart space of the poet and the thing that he may have wanted or maybe needed at some point. So playing house is the window. Theatrical culture, that is the sketch. I think both of them are a little windowy because you can have it where it's a little bit of both. I know that seems strange, but the shelter of the window is the heart space, and the sketch is what's being seen through the window. So it's a decent angle. I don't know. Maybe I'm not conveying myself properly. Leave some comments if you have any questions. But I would just bear that in mind, folks. You're sketching what you see, or you're You're writing in a window of what you feel, looking out from it, so that the reader, the enjoyer of poetry, can understand where you're coming from. And so we learn. We have these little lessons. I don't know if you're going to learn. I'm trying to help poetry. I'm trying to help creativity. I'm trying to magnify the muse and the transcendent force. That's been my mission lately. Here at JWC, we're not going to make you a better writer. We're going to make you a different writer. It's up to you to make yourself a better writer by reading lots and writing lots. As a friend of mine says, putting the effort in. I mean, for me, it's just fun. It's episodic satisfaction. But for some people, it's a lot of work to get where they need to be on the page. Thank you so much for listening to JWC Livestream. This has been Poetic Deep Dive. Head over to joeswritersclub.com. Check out our author pages and blogs. Go to joeswriters.club, sign up. Check out what's going on there, if anything is. Head over to Facebook and Twitter for JWC. That's Joe's Writers Club. And do check out our YouTube page. Like and subscribe our YouTube channel. The more people who do, the more people we can help. Thank you so much for listening. And do yourself a favor. Next time you're going to go on Facebook or play Candy Crush or watch an episode of Law and Order or something that you've seen about 50 million times, instead of doing that, read a poem, write a poem, go out for a walk and look at what's beautiful. Any of those things is going to touch you creatively and help your situation. It's going to break up the monotony. You may wake up to a love. You may wake up to find fondness in something that you never knew you wanted to be a part of, something like poetry. You may have a story to tell. You may have a scene to sketch. You may have a window to look out of and have people look into. Poetry can make things magical. And poetry can sometimes get to the truth faster than many other things because of what poetry represents, which is what we learned today. Sketches and windows, folks. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.